everybody, and welcome back to the Haunted Huddle Over Coffee. I'm Lauren.
Thanks.
And I'm T.
Today, we're going to be talking about the Amityville house. So next, you got to do a lot of research about this week. Do you want to talk about it?
Yeah. Very first
I can
family
edit this
that lived
out.
there was the DeFeos. Very first family that lived there was the DeFeos, and they're the ones that had that mass murder, essentially. The first family that was there was the DeFeos. They're the ones that had that mass murder that everybody freaked out about, obviously. And they moved there to Amityville, New York in the fall, roughly in 1974. So obviously the whole family, they were a very big family. I'm not gonna lie. At least to what I'm imagining, I feel like you shouldn't have this many family members in one house from somebody who's had 6 family members in the house at the same time. So it was obviously the husband and wife, who were Ronald DeFeo Sr. and his wife Louise, their 2 daughters, Dawn and Allison, and their sons, Mark, John Matthew, and their youngest son, Ronald Butch Jr. And Butch is the one who ended up killing everybody. And now he was the oldest. He was like 23 at this time. So he was the oldest, and the youngest was John Matthew, who was 7. So there's some pretty big gaps between these kids.
A little bit.
The ages were 23, 18, 13, 12, and 7.
Yikes.
So, your 20-year-old still living at home. Granted, having a teenage sibling is one thing, and then you've got 3 younger siblings running around, and you're like...
Well, I feel like that was more normal back then, right? You lived with your family?
Yeah, but normally, at least from what I'd imagine, is that there's not such big gaps between kids. Not saying there's anything wrong with having big age gaps, but I feel like most people that time, there was maybe at maximum a 3 to 4 year age gap between all of the kids.
I'm also just thinking I was 14 when my littlest brother was born. 13. So there's a 13-year age gap between me and my youngest brother, James.
I mean, there's an 11-year age gap between me and Ashley, and she's my only sibling.
My grandma had I know this was back in the 40s and 50s and stuff, because my grandma was born in 40, I think either 42 or 43. And my Aunt Barbara and Aunt Pat were 16, 17 by the time my aunt came around. Because my aunt's the youngest, my grandma was the second youngest. There was supposed to be a child between them and my Aunt Barbara, but there wasn't, for not anything in particular, just shit happens. But yeah, there was a huge age gap between them and my grandma, my aunt.
So I guess it would be pretty normal, but that's not to say that being a grown adult with 3 probably screaming around the house siblings.
Right, back to the DeFeos.
So before the night of the murder, it was seen by basically everybody around them that the DeFeos weren't necessarily a super happy family. People said that the father was very hostile, abusive, and overbearing, and he was just generally a dominating kind of individual. A lot of people, when all of this happened, they assumed that leading up to this, Butch had a lot of behavioral problems. He was a very troubled young man, and people thought that his father's way of parenting might have been the reason why he became the way he was. Junior started skipping work, going to the local bar. He became an alcoholic and a drug addict, and the more that he started using and becoming reliant on these substances, he started behaving really hostile towards his family, and sometimes he'd get physically violent with them.
Quick question. You're saying that he was a drug addict. What year was this with the DeFeos again?
It was 74.
1974? Okay, because I don't know why, for some weird reason in my brain, it's this is, back yonder. No, this is 50 years ago. So, I'm what kind of drugs did they have back in, ye old times?
No,
I don't know why, but...
They had Coke.
They had Coke.
Yeah.
They had Coke.
I don't want to know how you know that. I don't. But, ooh, that's loud.
Coca-Cola.
Oh, good point. But what I'm just saying is, like, I don't know why, but in my little, like, brain, I just think whenever I think about, like, the Amityville house, or you think about Annabelle, or you think about, like, any of these, like, older, like, not older, but, like, these, like,
These really
movies,
well-known stories.
you think they happen back in, like, ye old Benjamin Franklin time. I don't know why my brain just thinks about it like that, but, like, no, like, my mom was alive during this. And my
I
mom's
think
not
it's
old.
just because, like, it's known almost nationwide, some of these stories.
Yeah.
Like, granted, this got a lot of publicity because of the movie, and we'll talk about that later. But
Sorry about that. I just needed to know because
you're
that
fine.
was. I was just like,
You know, this was
when
all
was
taking place in, like, the
this?
70s.
And how does this man get all these drugs if he's like a bum? Then again,
That's what I was wondering. But
You do a lot from you. People will do just about anything if they have drugs or they have like some form of addiction. They really will do anything. And
20
I'm
bucks
not
is
saying
20
that to be
bucks.
mean. I'm not saying that to be disrespectful. Like they are very much in that like addictive. Like
they're
I
hustlers.
need, yeah. Like I need this and I need this now.
He
It's a
became
disease,
really
y'all.
violent
So,
towards his family. At least it was reported that it was mainly his family. Not to say he didn't get into altercations with anybody else, but I haven't found any records of it or a report of it, which is baffling. It's probably floating around somewhere, and I've just missed it. But it was reported once that Butch pulled a gun on his father, and there were many other reports of him getting physically hostile with the rest of his family. I couldn't find anything that really went into detail, and I'm not gonna lie, I don't really want to hear about him beating up his siblings or his mother. I feel like that's a little too graphic.
Yeah.
Anyway, I digress. So, November 13th of 1974, so it's within the same year that they fucking moved in, Butch had killed his entire family early in that morning. And then
So they didn't even live there
to...
for a year before he decided
Yeah.
to his family.
It was within the same year. So they say in like fall. So I'm thinking like early fall they moved in. And then in literally the beginning of November, he just fucking offed everybody.
That was it.
Yeah. Butch went to each room individually, shot his family members while they slept with a rifle that he had. The strangest part of the execution of these murders was that there were no signs of struggle found. Doesn't look like anybody woke up, tried to fight back. When police had finally arrived, all of the bodies face down into their beds. But they looked like they got moved that way, and that seemed to be the only thing that looked like it was moved, is that like he flipped them over so they weren't looking up after he had shot them.
So he realized, like, obviously he realized what he did was bad and wrong and, like, horrifying.
He didn't want them up, like, facing upward. He didn't want to see them. And weird thing that I find super just alarming, no neighbors heard any gunshots. Now think about it. You're shooting a rifle, and the police found no silencer on this rifle. You're shooting your mother, your father, your two sisters, and your two brothers. That's 6 freaking people, and no one heard a gunshot. Now, if nobody's been to Amityville, you're not in the middle of bumfuck nowhere.
No, it's literally like a pretty bustling town, I would say.
Yeah. And even during that time, your neighbors were still really close to you, so they definitely would hear a gunshot.
Well, I personally tend to think that, like, Long Islanders tend to just, like, keep to themselves and just, like, mind their own business. Like, you see somebody screaming on a street corner, and you're just like, okay, you look and you keep walking. Maybe
Nowadays
they just...
you do.
I think even back then, like, people were very, whatever's inside the home is inside the home kind of a thing.
I know, but if people were even saying that, like, what they'd observe while people were, like, in their yard or coming home, that Robert Sr. was being hostile with his family, like, obviously, it's not that, oh, well, if it's inside the home, it's inside the home. Not to mention, if you're hearing 6 gunshots within your neighborhood, would you not be alarmed? That time, I know at this time we wouldn't, because we're just so desensitized to it now.
Well, maybe it was just a thing that was so regular back then, especially if he was that hostile. Like, how do we know that gunshots were like a normal thing in the DeFeo home?
This is true. He already pulled a gun on his father once, so. But neighbors didn't hear anything like a gunshot. The only thing they heard was the DeFeo's family dog barking. All they heard. And what I find kind of baffling is that after killing his whole family, Butch had cleaned himself up, dressed himself for work, and then had eventually reported the murder when he got home.
I think the strangest part about all of this is that he went to work. Because if he never went to work and he was just always at the bar, people were just like, he went to work.
And it was a family-owned, like, they owned an auto shop that he worked at. So his family owned it, which is probably why he got away with so much crap of not showing up to work and still was employed.
Because mommy and daddy owned the business.
But essentially he left like it was a normal day and went to work, and then he came back. And because of this, he made up this whole claim that, like, oh, well, I came home to this horrific scene, and then he made up some story that it was the work of a hitman and some accomplices, and how they showed up that morning to force him to kill his family at gunpoint. Police didn't buy it, and eventually Butch had just, like, said, yeah, no, I killed my family. There was no gunman or anything like that. And during the confession to the police, DeFeo confessed that once I started, I just couldn't stop. It went so fast.
Mm-hmm.
And according to Butch, he was allegedly hearing voices that were telling him to kill his family while they were within the house. That's what he had said during his confessions.
Wait, somebody was telling him?
He heard voices.
What is this, like the son of Sam? Like my dog told me to do it.
Yeah.
That sounds like he had, like, some form of schizophrenia.
Well, see, now, the prosecution psychiatrist argued against it. And they diagnosed Butch with antisocial personality disorder, saying that he didn't hear any voices and that he would have simply thought that killing his family wasn't wrong, which I don't know a lot about antisocial personality disorder, but I'm not sure it works that way.
It kind of sounds like one of those weird things, right? So, like, people getting told by, like, some higher being, some form, whether it's voices in your head that is telling them to kill someone.
Yeah, but I feel like that's more common with, like, cases of schizophrenia.
That's what I think. And I can think back to my grandma telling me that this happened in her apartment complex when she lived out in California. That one of her neighbors, they were happily married, and then all of a sudden, like, this guy was told that God was telling him to kill his wife, and she was running away from him, and he was chasing her with a knife. And I forgot, like, what they had said that the jury had said about it, but, like, he ended up getting, like, she ended up defending herself, and I think she, like, really hurt him in the process of defending herself. But the court, because, like, he was mentally, like, unwell, still, like, gave him, like, a slap on the wrist or something like that.
Yeah, because then they just send you to a mental facility, like a penitentiary like that, which has psychiatric care primarily. Lauren, you looked like you were doing research.
So, I was just looking up, because, like, obviously this happened in, like, the early 70s.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, Ron DeFeo had to go to jail. Everything like that. And because this happened in Long Island, he went upstate. This, to me, is just slightly bonkers. That is, like, my 100% catchphrase, just bonkers at this point. He only died 3 years ago, Ron DeFeo Jr., in Albany, in the hospital. March 12th, 2021, he passed away in the Albany Medical Center. That's not that long ago. He was only 60. Well, I know it sounds bad. It's big. Oh, he was only 69 years old, but he spent his whole life in jail.
He would have continued to spend his whole life in jail anyway, because they sentenced him to 6 consecutive life terms. There's no way
you're getting out.
I'm
No.
sorry if I don't understand, like, the way our court rulings rule for stuff like that. Like, you have this many life sentences. It's just a life sentence. Just say that, because, like, you're saying it to be like you have 3, but it's like, obviously we're human. Why are you saying we have 3? Like,
just in case we're convicting vampires all of a sudden.
It's for the drama of it.
I think it's also to try and get, like, a point across that, like, you did something wrong and you're going to pay for each and every one of them, but realistically...
You're done. Like, your life is in prison.
Okay. I also looked this up. Antisocial personality disorder is sometimes called sociopathy. It's a mental health condition in which a person consistently shows no regard for right or wrong and ignores the rights and feelings of others.
All right. Really quickly, going back to DeFeo Jr., it also says that his cause of death was never released to the public. Like, I know, obviously, like, he wasn't old or anything, but it doesn't say if it was, like, cancer or if he was stabbed or if he tried killing himself. Like, it doesn't say. That's kind of scary.
Maybe he made a pact with the devil, and devil came back for his, his end of the bargain.
Wouldn't have let him live that long. What do you mean?
I mean, think about it. He probably just wants to see this man suffer now. And prison's not, like, while you are taken care of in prison, it's still not, like, you're not living.
Your minor basic needs are met. Do you want to hear something that's really fucked up? Ron DeFeo Jr. was buried with his family.
Why?
Yes, Ron DeFeo Jr. was buried with his family in St. Charles Cemetery in Farmingdale. That's right by where the Hooters is on 110.
I love that that's how we're going to, like, mark that. It's by the Hooters.
By the Hooters. I mean,
Listen,
Hooters isn't even that great. That's kind of a travesty.
There's only like 2 Hooters on Long Island, and anybody who lives on Long Island knows, like, kind of where they are, kinda. But, like, it's right there on 110 across the street, right by where the airport is. It's like Readington, I think. It's like a private little airport for, like, fancy people. But yeah, no, he's buried with his family.
I don't like that.
I don't like that either. Like, I'm sorry. I know, like, Long Island families, they're very tight-knit families. Like, everybody, like, knows everybody. Everybody kind of lives kind of close. Like,
I'm sorry, but they clearly weren't a tight-knit family.
I know. But even then, like, why are you burying him with his family? He killed them. Yeah. Sorry that we got off topic, but, like, I just, like, looked it up and I was like, as I was, like, scrolling, did he die? And it goes, yes, and he was buried in St. Charles Cemetery in Farmingdale. And I'm just like, you buried him with his family?
Now, is he, like, actually with them? Like, I hate that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Big time with his family. If you go to findagrave.com, ew, that's a scary face. I don't like that.
I hate the fact that there is findagrave.com.
Well, no, you gotta think there's, like, people who try to find, like, their ancestors, or they try to find, like, distant relatives and try to figure out, like, where they're buried for people who die. And, like, yeah, that's how you can look it up, especially, like, stuff like that. But, yeah, no, he's buried right there with his family. He was cremated.
You say that like it's better.
It's not better. It's not better. But no, that
a whole lot of no.
Just a whole lot of no. It's gotta...
But is there, like, any details about him being buried, too? Because sometimes, like, it may not be right next to his family. It may just be an unmarked grave. It may just...
It's not unmarked. It is a marked grave. He's got a memorial ID. He's got everything right here.
I don't know who paid for that. Who, like, anybody left in the family, if there's survivors, like, who did this?
But the nice thing is, like, his little tiny, what's it called, obituary. I know we're getting a little off topic. It looks like some of the money from the Amityville Horror, the book that was made about his family, that was part of the money that they had for his burial. He also got married and divorced 3 times in prison.
What?
Yeah, the last sentence, the last little paragraph inside of his, like, eulogy, not eulogy, what is it called? Like, the little obituary thing? Yeah. Throughout his sentence, DeFeo Jr. offered various accounts of the events of that fateful night. He was married and divorced 3 times while incarcerated. He passed away on March 12, 2021 while serving his sentence. The end.
So fuck you.
That, I don't like that. It doesn't give you the option to, like, look at. It's just the one photo, like, I'm sorry, this is... I'm gonna show y'all.
Your camera is so bad quality.
Hold on, let me drop down the...
No, honey. Like, your camera is bad quality.
Because it says I'm in low data mode. Nothing. But no, he's a creepy looking dude.
I was going to say that everybody who looks a little on the creepy side is actually creepy, but
In this case, he was.
In this case, yes.
He was not okay.
Alright, so back to DeFeos. Sorry about that. Got on a little bit of a tangent.
That's actually
I apologize.
it for the DeFeos. But literally a year later, after this mass murder, the Lutzes moved in. And now these people thought, we all know about them. These people thought that this was like their dream home, and they fell in love with it, and they bought it for $80,000.
That is a steal on Long Island. Even back then.
And I'm sure everybody's seen it, and if you haven't, it's a waterfront house. It's got a little boat dock and a boathouse, and it's a very big house. Obviously, if it could comfortably hold a family of 7, it's a pretty big house. Now, the Lutz family wasn't necessarily as large as the DeFeos. It was George and Kathy, which were the mother and father, and then their 3 children and the family dog. So they were a pretty small family. It gave their kids places to run around. The dog had space to just move around. They had enough space to work with and be super comfortable in the house. So prior to moving, George was a businessman, and after moving, to this house, he got really sluggish and wasn't really motivated, turned very cold and cranky. Didn't seem to be any reason why. He just started becoming that way. And while living in the house, George had said that he kept waking up almost every night at 3:15 in the fucking morning. Now, I'd be bonkers if I kept waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning.
The witching hour.
I don't understand. The witching hours is 3 o'clock. No, I was regrettably born on the witching hour. My mother hated it.
Makes sense.
Dun,
it makes
dun,
sense.
dun.
Sorry.
All right, nurse.
Calm down. We're not playing Dead by Daylight.
Don't sit here and teleport,
I
Don't
can't
do that
play,
shit.
But I can't play Dead by Daylight because my Mac does not support the game. I can't play it.
Your Mac is not built for gaming. I don't care what people say. Macs are not built for games.
Just,
they're
just
not.
invest in a PC. Just invest in a PC and upgrade it.
Okay, we're getting sidetracked.
With what money?
So, 3:15 was the alleged same time that the DeFeos were murdered by their oldest son. So there were many sleepless nights for George, which was very depressing and sad. But apparently, one of these nights, he had found his youngest daughter, Missy, standing at her bedroom window with the outline of a pig face and with red eyes just standing behind her. Now, I don't know about anybody else, but all I can think of is Amanda from Jigsaw when I heard that description.
That's the first image that popped into my head when you said outline of a pig.
There's
face.
a pig face.
I'm like, Jigsaw! Hi, I'm Amanda.
That's literally all I thought of when I was fucking reading this. I was like, I don't like that. I hate that. But honestly, like a normal father, seeing that in the middle of the night and seeing his child in the same room, he ran into her room, super alarmed. But when he got into her room, this image had disappeared, and he saw Missy sleeping in her bed. So he was seeing things. But shortly after this incident, Missy started talking about her new friend, a pig named Jody. Yes, Lauren.
So we know that DeFeo Jr. Was big into, the no-no zippy zippies. Is it possible? No, the no-no zippy drugs. Is it
I couldn't hear what you said.
Sorry. I'm trying not to be too loud because, I'm trying to still get used to this mic.
Mm-hmm.
Is it possible that maybe his kid and him both found a little bit of those zippy no-no drugs and partook?
That the Lutzes did?
Yeah, and just started tripping out.
As far as I'm aware, Missy was the youngest daughter, and she was no older than 10.
Little kids get into
not.
everything.
This is true, but I'm hoping not. Why are you causing violence?
I'm not causing violence on purpose.
So, this was one of the first incidences that was reported by the Lutzes. Another startling incident that happened during another night where George was awake was that he was looking down at his wife while she was sleeping next to him, and before his very eyes, she seemed to be aging into an old woman. Like, I'm sorry, you have to be on something.
Like I said, he got into the zippy no-no drugs.
Did you look at the Ark of the Covenant? Like, did you open it and then look at it?
Yeah.
This is an Indiana Jones, babe.
But they were claiming that it's the effects of the house, and apparently it also got to Kathy, his wife, because she seemed to just act like a different person. And obviously George was seeing her as a different person because he saw her age into an old lady. But even some witnesses, like, around the neighborhood said that she'd just start acting as if she was a completely different person, and even her own mother had claimed that. How true it is, I don't know. But there were many paranormal, like, genuine, I say that in quotes because unless you see it, you never know, paranormal experiences that had happened in the house, like doors being ripped off of their hinges, flies filling rooms in the house in the dead of winter, cloven hoof prints in the snow outside of their home, slime oozing from their walls, and they found a secret room in the basement. Secret room.
Secret
the red room?
tunnel.
And now, this room was painted entirely red, which earned it the name the Red Room, which I'm sure plenty of us have heard about a red room in any kind of horror
Context?
story. Yeah. Now, this room wasn't found in the original blueprints of the house. There was no records of an add-on of this room, and it was in the basement. So, like, I'm sorry, but building something in the basement, which was completely underground, it's not an easy feat.
Especially being right by the water like that?
Yeah.
And is it also like, because y'all say like y'all live on a rock, like an actual, like, is it like rock like Japan rock where you have to really like blast into the ground to like
It depends on where
get
you
into
are.
Well, because Long Island was made with the glacier, if you look at anybody on Long Island knows this. If you're more at the North Shore, it's going to be more rocky because that's where a lot of the sediment came off of the glacier as it would drift down, and then everything on the South Shore is all nice and beautiful, soft, sandy beaches. So there are definitely areas that are going to be a lot more rocky, but essentially Long Island's like just a big hard mass. You don't have to blow stuff up in most places.
Just might take a little extra oomph with power tools.
And then there's also just, the town rules and stuff like that. There's, like a million rules like, oh, you can't build this high up, or you can't have a fire pit in your backyard that's buried in the ground. Stupid stuff like that.
Yeah. But this room, it was also really small, and all I can imagine, because they just describe it as being able to sit maybe two people very closely together, all I can think of is a closet. Allegedly, this room gave off a nasty odor. Like, it wasn't described what kind of odor, but it was just offensive. And George and the family had reported that their dog actually refused to go in the basement after they had discovered this room, and honestly, in my mind, I'm like, yeah, because it fucking smells.
And it probably freaks the dog out.
Yeah, but George was saying that he constantly attempted to call the dog down with him, and the dog absolutely refused to go anywhere into the basement. And he said, and I quote, he just wouldn't go in. He backed away. It's the only time I can recall ever seeing him cower from something.
Dog's cowering because of the basement. Dogs have a sixth sense. You can't tell me they don't.
If there's something that a dog won't do, you should probably like pay attention to like your surroundings or something, because they're gonna tell you, like Lauren said, they're gonna tell you before you even realize
what's happening.
Like, anybody who's ever walked a dog and you're trying to make the dog go in one direction, they're just staring dead at it. And you're like, come on, let's go, Buster, let's go this way. And they're just like, no, we're going this way. And they literally do 360 and they go 180 and they go the other direction. Listen to your goddamn dog.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, animals know what's happening. They're not stupid.
Even cats are really good at that, too.
Yeah, but cats, most of them, I'm not going to say all because some of them will, Most cats aren't going to save your ass when you're being stupid. It is survival of the fittest, and you are not fit.
And
That's
my
true,
cat
but
also
you should
attacks.
also. I was
Bubble
gonna say, you
baths.
should also pay attention. If your cat is giving you some, like, weird strangeness, like, we had a cat that there's just some guys he didn't want to be around. He didn't like.
Mhm.
And he'd sit there and he'd watch them from, like, a distance. And if your cats are, if your cats are watching, it'd be one thing if, like, the first 5 minutes they're watching someone because they're unsure. But if they, like, come up to you or they start, like, obviously they're, like, kind of comfortable. Especially if they're like people cats, because both my cats are very like people-oriented cats. One's just skittish, the other is a menace. That's the best way of putting it. I won't attack you, but like they do stay weary for a little bit, and then like once they warm up, they're like friend. But if they don't, then it's like,
It's
are
also
you
just the
friendly?
personality of the cat, too, sometimes. Same thing with dogs.
Yeah, my cat's obsessive. My cat likes to sleep on my chest, on my neck. He has to touch
I
you
know
while
he tried to
sleeps.
suffocate me one night.
That was Osiris.
No, it wasn't. You didn't have Osiris.
Yes, I did. Last time you slept over before we went upstate, we had Osiris.
You didn't. No, you didn't.
Could have sworn we did.
No, you got them
Either-
after.
Toad is a gigantic love.
Except
Unless
when
you
the
tried-
camera's on.
Except when the camera's on, he does not want anybody to know that he's affectionate. He's just like, no, I'm a tough kitty. Stop it, mommy. Bye.
I'm intimidating.
Hi,
Ferocious.
scary little... I'm ferocious with my free white hairs and being all pitch black and my big green eyes. I love that freaking cat. He's a good boy.
So, following this, one night, George had claimed to hear a band playing downstairs, like in their living room. I know, alarming. So, obviously, he went to go see what the fuck was happening and found absolutely no one. Like, lights still off, nobody. When he turned the lights on, he did find that their furniture was moved, as if to, like, make room for people to be in the living room. Like how if you were to have a party in the house, like if you had a house party and you'd move furniture, like, off to the side for people to, like, congregate and dance and all that. That's how their furniture was moved.
Cute.
And obviously the music wasn't actually there, so it was like, what the hell?
Like I said, they were doing the zippy no-nos.
The family had enlisted a priest to help them, and he also had many strange experiences within the house, and then he became ill after becoming involved in the house. So after all this, January 14th of 1976, after living there for 28 days, just some random scary night had led to the Lutzes suddenly packing up. So just like generalized clothes and shit, threw it in a bag, and left. They left many of their belongings behind. And the family never planned to leave the house forever, though that is what ended up happening. They never went back. They never got any of their stuff. It was sold up for auction when the house was for sale.
Just poof.
Yup. And then after this, the Lutz family had corroborated with author Jay Anson, who eventually turned their true story into a best-selling book in 1977.
And is that where we get the movie from?
Yes, the movie was based off of his book. Now, it's also said that, obviously, when it got big publicity, people were asking Anson if he ever had any strange occurrences while writing this book, and he had said, let's leave it at no. But he did say that many of his friends and their children had very strange things happen to them when they had a copy of the manuscript.
Wait,
So
Wait,
he
what?
didn't have any of his own personal experiences, but he had sent like the manuscript or like the rough draft to like 3 of his friends, and they had really strange like occurrences while they had it in their possession during these occurrences. One, his car lit on fire while he had the manuscript within his car. The second friend and his friend's son nearly drowned in their car with a copy of the manuscript in the trunk. And the third person, his third friend, had tragically died in a fire the first night she had received the first chapter of the manuscript.
Wait, the friend died?
one of his friends died. I believe the fire was in her home, and allegedly the manuscript from all of these within these people's possessions, so the fires, the waterlogging of your car, the manuscripts were fine. Like, intact, not burnt, not drenched in water. This is an alleged occurrence. I don't really believe it. I don't buy it.
I think it might have just meant to sell more books, if I'm being frank.
But one of his friends did, in fact, die. I don't know.
That's not okay. That's sad, though. That's really sad.
But that is the end of the Amityville horror.
And then we get the movie, which is just absolutely bonkers. Just bunker balls.
I mean, they sold all of their rights, and they made all this mad money off of it, and it became ridiculous, is what it is.
Well, now, if you wanted to, because the house is still there. The house is still standing in Amityville, New York.
People live in it right now.
Yeah! They bought it for dirt cheap.
Curious to see if, like, they've experienced anything weird, because obviously they're living in it, and, like, y'all haven't seen anything in the news about some crazy, like...
You wouldn't hear anything in Long Island news about that.
Yeah, no. Long Islanders don't really give a crap. We give a crap. Literally what's been in the news the most here on Long Island is people driving through buildings, shops burning down, and people's favorite, like, delis being robbed. That is what is in the news on Long Island. I know it's a stereotype. Oh, Long Islanders, they like their bacon, egg, and cheese. Get out of here. The pizza places, the local mom and pop Italian restaurant. But that is genuinely what Long Islanders care about, is food.
You want to know what's super funny? I know, Lauren, I've told you this.
Mm-hmm.
My parents almost bought the Amityville house.
I remember you telling me that, because, like, we were on our way to the city, and you're like...
We were talking about it, and I brought that up. My mother told me that when we were watching movies, and she goes, your father almost bought that house. I was like, what? Now, this was before I was born, and my sister must have been, like, 8 or a little bit older at the time when they were looking for a house. Currently, we live in my grandparents' house, my father's childhood home. But they were looking for a house to move out of, and obviously it was still really dirt cheap, and my dad was like, wow, this is a great deal, which honestly it is. It's a waterfront house. It's got a fucking boathouse outside. It's a very nice size. It's a very pretty house too.
It's gorgeous.
It's beautiful. And my dad was like, oh, super cheap. And my mom had heard this horror story, and she's looking at the house, and she's like, nope. Absolutely the hell not, Joseph. We're not. But no. I thought that was funny, because I looked at my mother. I was like, you almost sent us to a haunted house? She's like, I didn't do it. Your father almost did it. I told him no.
Would have lived in a haunted house. Are you kidding me?
Well, my dad was in denial. He was just like, there's no way it's the same house. And my mom's looking at the description, and she's like, yes, the fuck it is.
And you know what's the craziest thing about the Amityville house? Like, very few places on, like, Google Maps and, like, online, so, like, what is it, like, what's that thing that's a satellites that you can see from this, the things, is that it's very hard to get something to not appear on those maps. Things that don't appear on those maps are, like, most of Area 51, government, like, labs and big buildings and stuff like that, because they don't want you seeing that kind of shit. You can't find that house anymore on, like, obviously everybody knows where it is on Long Island. I'm not going to be doxing them and put the address out here, because these people just want their privacy that live in the house now.
They've definitely been doxed before, and I'm not going to lie, I think they've changed that address
multiple times.
Like a bunch of times, because people kept doxing anybody who lived there.
Ready? It's in Amityville. It's by the water. That's all you need to know. If you want to look it up yourself, you can look it up yourself, but I'm not going to be the person to put it out there.
Just leave the people alone.
Yeah, leave them alone. But, like, seriously, like, bunkers. It's very... But, like, you cannot find that house or, like, find street views or be able to, like, literally see it. It's just a big blur. It's gone. You can't see it.
That's kind of funny.
Well, yeah, they got so sick and tired of, like, every single, like, daily having somebody come up and, like, be like, let's go look at this house.
And to be honest, in this day and age, you should really be careful with, like, just going up to people's property nowadays. Like, you really should be careful because that is a good way of getting hurt nowadays.
You should just be more respectful. Period. End of subject.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't want anybody getting hurt, and it's just don't.
Yeah, no.
It's like for your safety and the owner's safety. Both.
People don't care about that anymore.
No. Long Island, people trespass everywhere. Like, I don't know a single person who hasn't been to, like, Kings Park, like, psychiatric center, which has been closed for a good amount of time right now, who hasn't gone exploring in places that they weren't supposed to. Wait, you've never explored around Kings Park?
Yeah, because you said that we'd go, and it never happened.
Yeah, I remember you being like, we should go. The next time T is up here, we should go. And I was like, okay. But like,
maybe we should 100% though go, and we should record a podcast there.
I don't want to record a podcast there.
I was telling my coworker that we record a podcast, right? And even she was like, you should really go to like some of the haunted places. She's like, because you're all in different locations. I was like, yeah, well, 2 of us are in Long Island, and then
Long Island.
On Long Island, and then I'm in Maryland, of course. So like, she's like, you should just like all like plan visits and stuff, and then go visit some of these haunted places and record from there. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to like record from a haunted place, but then again, I'm also just very white woman. Like, I'm gonna just go here. Don't give it power, because it can't really scare me if I just don't acknowledge it.
It's like Tony at my house.
Ignorance is bliss.
Ignorance will help you, but it's not going to help you 100% of the time. You have to pick and choose where your ignorance will help.
Right. Like when you go to Nex's house and see Lucas.
Actually, Lucas? I don't see Lucas.
He's very quiet.
It's been quiet.
Just the creature in my attic.
Yeah, it's just the one thing. I hear like the moving things up there.
The boxes were moving.
That's okay. Speaking of like haunted places, so some of the military housing can get downright spooky because stuff has happened in military houses, right? And I remember my mom saying this, like we were living in Utah at the time, and we had like this cabinet with like a mirror, and my dad had his like model planes sitting in there because my dad likes to build models. And she saw like a man, like a pilot in like a tan jacket, just kind of standing in the room. I've heard hisses like in that specific room.
No.
I would hear like hisses. No. And Utah is somewhat of a desert. I thought like maybe a snake had got him, but I've never seen a snake in that entire neighborhood. But it was just kind of like at random because you never heard it ever again. And some of the housing, I know like they've been working on knocking down some of the military housing, but there's a lot of problems with military housing, like asbestos.
And before anybody comes at her sideways, Tony is a military brat.
Yeah. And I still know people in the military. I have good friends in the military.
And
Tony, I think you've lived... Tony, how many states have you lived in?
California, Utah, Florida, Alaska, and now Maryland. But I chose to move to Maryland.
Didn't you grow up in like Tokyo?
I was born in Japan.
Okay, sorry about that. Japan.
I was born in Japan. It's actually way further north. So it's like it's on like Misawa Air Base is quite literally on the tip of like the bigger island. Yeah, and then like I keep forgetting what that island is, but above it I think is Hokkaido.
You've just been all over.
Lived near Tokyo. We have gone. I think my parents have been to Tokyo at least like once or twice. But yeah, that was my dad's first deployment in the military because I was born a year after they got married. I was so surprised.
Surprise!
Which the government still likes to call me a foreign national, even though I'm an American citizen.
You can't be a foreign national. You were born on a base.
Yeah, base. For most people that don't know, military bases, like if you were born on the base, you are still American because that is technically American soil. Like how in DC we have Embassy Lane. every one of those embassies are considered that country's like land. They have like a little plot. So while you go to like a different embassy, you're technically like, I guess, visiting that country. It's just very tiny.
You know, my mother could be considered for an embassy because she was adopted in the UK.
She's a foreign national after our secrets.
60 years too late.
But then again, they probably had a lot less grip on stuff like that too, so it was probably easier to get stuff like, you know, for your mom.
She was also like little, like she was a baby when she was adopted.
Mm-hmm.
So
like
I'm
all
sure
that
like
stuff
getting
was...
the paperwork at the base wasn't nearly as hard. Which honestly, it shouldn't be if you're born on the base, but I digress.
It shouldn't be, because I remember talking to my dad about this, and I told him about it, because it was a clearance for this job I was going for, and my boss was like, well, what does your birth certificate look like? My birth certificate doesn't say birth certificate. It says consulate report of birth abroad. which is essentially a birth certificate saying that, hey, you're an American citizen born in another country.
Oh my
Both
God.
my parents are American.
Essentially, you got a receipt.
Yeah. I do. I have the receipt. And I told my dad. So we
can return to sender?
I mean, do you want me? I'll just go eat
no!
my
You know how if you have... You don't know because you are the oldest sibling, but neither of you know, technically. But anybody who is a middle child or a youngest sibling, you'll always probably hear, like, your sibling going, can we just return to sender? Now there's a return receipt.
See, that would apply to my brother, because my brother's the middle child. He was also born in Japan.
Return to sender!
And the worst part is, my mom lost his birth certificate.
No receipt.
No receipt.
Can't return.
So this poor child had to be like, I have to go through Texas. At the because it's like some like major hub in Texas that deals with that sort of thing, and then the people in Texas have to contact the embassy in Japan and be like, "Hey, can we?" It takes like 6 to 10 weeks to get a new birth certificate. So after that happened, I'm like, "Mom, I'm taking my birth certificate. I need this."
With my little brother James, he doesn't look anything like anybody else in the family. He's got dark brown hair, dark brown eyes. He's got like a darker skin tone than everybody else in the house. And everybody else in my family is blonde-haired, blue-eyed, very, very fair-skinned. And then out pops James. So we had this poor boy convinced for like the better part of it that he was found in a dumpster. My mom, for context, works in a hospital, and we had him convinced that she found him in the dumpster at the hospital when she was outside, like on a smoke break, that she found James in the dumpster.
How long did he believe that?
I think on some level he might still believe it, because there's really no photos of my mom being pregnant with James anywhere.
I mean, there's no photos of my mom being pregnant with me, so...
So, like, I don't know if the child even still believes the fact that he's our sibling. And then there's certain things, like, he'll do, like, he'll roll his eyes from while he put his hands on his hips the same way my mother does. And she goes, yeah, no, he's mine. That's mine. He's a good kid, though. 95% of the time. 95. I don't think anybody's a good person 100% of the time.
Well, just like in high school, I'm pretty sure no matter what you do, you're going to be a toxic person in high school. It just depends on the level of toxicity you're going to be.
I do believe that everybody's toxic to somebody or some way, but it's all because of the way people perceive you and the way that you have put yourself in front of others.
You will always be the villain in somebody's story.
Mm-hmm. And always remember, you're probably a sensitive subject in somebody's relationship.
I have no doubt I'm probably, like, Maleficent in somebody's story.
I'm okay with being Maleficent in somebody's story.
Hi.
What?
Bye.
Why? What did I do? I look like a fucking goblin. I don't know what you talk about.
I think we all look like gerblins right now. But personally, I think when it comes to the Amityville house, I think definitely some weird stuff happened to the Lutzes. Because there's definitely some very angry spirits that are there. Because, like, if you're 7 years old and you get murdered, I'd be pretty angry too. By your big brother who's supposed to protect you. But I definitely don't think it's as bad as the movie tries to make it seem.
No, definitely not.
Because, like, obviously, the more drama, the better. But because where the Amityville house is, used to be part of the Shinnecock tribe area, the Native American tribes that were over there, I definitely think there's some angry spirits over there that were just forced out of their land, and I don't think that helps. So I think it's true to a certain extent. What do you think, Nexie?
I always think that it's just Native Americans because we live on a giant stolen piece of land.
We really do live on a big piece of stolen. What about you, T? What do you think?
I think there's definitely something, and I think when it comes down to this house, I think the only thing that like kind of just makes me think that maybe people are just crazy and it really is a figment of the imagination is the fact that there are people living in this house today that seem to be happy unless technology has just spooked away all the ghosts because they're like, oh no, we don't want to get caught. We have phones, cameras, especially if you have cameras all in your house. I don't think they want to be known.
Or maybe they're just living
really
in
stops
peace.
Spirits.
Or maybe they're just living in peace with the spirits in the home.
Maybe there's like some sort of maybe they have a crucifix above every door.
Absolutely nothing.
I think maybe they just came to an understanding, like, hey, you can have this half of the house, we'll keep this half of the house, and we'll just vibe. Be kind of cool if the people that live in the house listen to this and they like just like send us a message and be like, hey, this is the way it is here.
I don't think that's gonna happen.
No.
Probably not. They're just probably so sick and tired of everything that has to do with the Amityville house that they're just like, we're done.
I mean, if there's no activity there, like genuinely, I think it's a crock of shit.
Yeah,
Like,
all
sure,
of it.
maybe most of it. Like, definitely for the DeFeos, there was just Butch had something wrong. He mentally just had a lot of issues, and obviously his upbringing definitely made that 10 times worse. And everything being untreated, which was usual back in that time.
We have to hide our mental disabilities, our mental issues.
Or we just deny that it was there, and it's just like, oh, well, you're just troubled. It's like, yeah, I'm troubled now.
Let's get out the leeches.
Shock therapy.
Let's get a blanket on now. Got myself all nice and cozy. Yeah, but I'm pretty sure that wraps up this episode of the Haunted Huddle. Next week, we're going to be talking about the axe murderer of the Axeman of New Orleans. Is that right? Or make sure to be having that jazz in full swing. I like being cringy. It makes my heart happy. Don't dim my sparkle.
I don't think there's a physical way to dim your sparkle.
You're like a sun.
You're a star.
Yes,
You don't have to extinguish yourself.
It's better than being a moon.
Because I just absorb when everybody else sparkles at me.
Actually, I feel like you give people energy.
What, the moon?
No.
The sun. I was like, why is the moon giving people energy?
The moon doesn't, but the moon does help make wave energy.
Have we ever seen what happens to people during full moons, though?
Water. It's because it controls the water.
It's because of gravity.
It's the gravity of the...
It's the gravity of the situation here.
It's the gravity of the moon.
Increasing on me.
Oh my god, all I can think right now is the lead message. I can't! The gravity
is increasing on me. No, it's not! My sister's done that to me.
You know what I used to do to my little brother all the time? You know in Frozen, when Anna jumps on top of Elsa and goes, the sky is awake, so I'm awake and we have to play. I do that to my little brother. Mind you, he's 14 and bigger than me now. I will still go over to him and be like, the sky's awake, so I'm awake. I have to annoy you. He's like, leave me alone. And I'm like, come on, let's hang out. And he's like, go away, you're annoying. And then he just closes the door on my face.
Cool, 14-year-old.
14-year-old boy, that's just the way he is. Alright, well, until next time, everyone on Patreon is going to love these unedited versions of the frickin' podcast.
Us forgetting what the fuck we're doing.
Yep.
Random rambling.
You guys who would like, we do have a Patreon. It is down below. You can get some exclusive content, the unedited versions of the podcast, as well as some of our favorite other topics and stories. Until next time, stay spooky. Bye!